You're listening to Productivity Protected, the podcast that's all about data privacy and security. We'll unpack emerging threats, hot issues in data security, and top ways to protect your data and how you work. Here's your host, Spencer Kupferman.
Welcome back to the Productivity Protected podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Kupferman. We've got an awesome podcast here. We're talking about from zip to data protection, the evolution of a software company. And you got it right. We're going to talk about the storied history of PKWARE today. The inventors, that's right, ladies and gentlemen, the inventors of the zip file. And we have a very special guest today to take us back down memory lane, talk about this storied history and the great evolution to a world-class data protection company, which PKWARE is today. I'm so honored to have one of my favorite people here at PKWARE join us, our Senior Director of Software Development, Jack Dale. Jack, born and raised in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and attended Marquette University and majored in technology. Jack loves basketball. It's one of his passions since he was a little boy. Loves the game, loves sports. Just a sport guy. We talk sports all the time. We talk about the great Bucks run. And here's some other interesting facts about Jack as he grew up collecting coins. So any coin collectors out there, reach out to Jack Dale. He's got a tremendous collection, what I hear, of all sorts of foreign currencies. Sports cards. So he's got great sports cards and great memorabilia. If you ever talk to Jack and he's working at his home office, he's got some awesome jerseys just lined up right behind him. He's got great jerseys of great Milwaukee Marquette legend basketball players who went on to play in the NBA. So basketball, Jack will talk basketball with you all day. Now, we're not going to talk basketball today, Jack, on this podcast. We save that for offline. We're going to talk about the great history and the evolution of this awesome company that we work for. We talk a little bit about Jack's professional background. Before coming here, Jack's been here for about a decade here at PKWARE. And before that, he was at what's now Blue Yonder. Many of you know Blue Yonder was Red Prairie. And so Jack was there and he spent about 7 years working in quality and manual testing, automation, and DevOps. Managed remote teams in India, in Shanghai, helped with customer projects of their base product, and really has done everything under the sun, whether it's between QA and development. Jack's done it. When he came here about 10 years ago, he came here as a QA manager, really focusing on the AWS-based key management testing and deployments around AWS. 3 years after that, he was transitioned over to product development. And I know that was a career path that Jack wanted to experience, focusing on our PK Protect platform, formerly known as SmartCrypt. The PK Protect platform currently works with the mainframe in our endpoint teams, building and evolving our data protection functionality, as I said, on the PK Protect platform. There's no more, as I said, as much as he loves the Bucks and he loves Marquette basketball, no one loves PKWARE and is committed more than Jack Dale. So Jack, honored to have you. Glad to finally get you here on the Productivity Protected podcast to talk about one of your favorite things. It's not basketball. I'm sorry. Maybe we'll do a podcast on basketball, but you're here to talk about PKWARE, which is also, I know, one of your favorite things. Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you, Spencer. I think they say it on the radio, first time, long time listener of the podcast, first time calling in. I guess you can't really call into podcasts, but excited to be here. Definitely excited to, talk PKWARE history and all the fun adventures we've had along the way. It's really been a pleasure of mine to work at PKWARE over the last decade. I've met some, incredible people, extremely talented, extremely intelligent people that have really shifted and helped shape the way that I approach, my own life in digital, files and protection and security, and really, help enhance my own view of, what individuals and companies should be doing to protect protect their own data, especially as the world kind of continues to get more online. So really excited to be here, and thanks for having me.
That's great, Jack. Appreciate you carving the time. I know you're a busy guy. We got releases and all sorts of other important things to deal with, customers and other product development initiatives I know you're right in the middle of. So appreciate your leadership. Jack's one of our top leaders here. I'd say he's an up-and-comer, but he's not, because he's already arrived. So thanks for being a part of what we do here at PKWARE. It's been a pleasure getting to know you over almost the last 3 years here. And I'm not going to hold it against you that you're a Bucs fan, but that's okay. That's okay. They're a great team. And like I said, we're going to save that podcast for another time. But Jack is a history buff. Okay. He's a history buff of all things PKWARE. And that's why we called him on, because he has a lot of great anecdotes about the founder of PKWARE, about really, like I said, the evolution coming from a zip file compression player to all the way to a full-blown data protection, discovery, remediation, encryption vendor. And so he knows all about that. Let's just jump right in, Jack. So, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, I mentioned we're here. I'm in Milwaukee, and Milwaukee is really known around the country, maybe even around the world. I'd argue around the world, for beer and cheese. And of course, I've had the pleasure of sampling some of that here over the last almost 3 years. But it's probably not so much known for the tech hub that it's become. People would say, well, isn't that Silicon Valley, Spencer? Sure, Silicon Valley is great, but for innovation, and it is a tech hub. But Milwaukee has created a tech hub, and I like to think, and I think you'll agree with me, that PKWARE is one of the founding fathers of that technology hub, of that innovation hub right here in the heart of Milwaukee. And I think people, when I talk to people in the space about where I work and what we do, and they say, where's PKWARE located? And I tell them in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. They're almost surprised. They're kind of surprised or shocked to hear that. And I then begin educating them on why this is a great tech hub. We've got, as you mentioned, we have awesome people here locally. Of course, we have awesome people all around our company, around the globe. But this is really the heartbeat of PKWARE. As you know, you've been, like I said, a part of that for a decade and helped creating that the last 10 years, certainly in the product development space and QA space. And so I guess, the question would be, this place, as I said, we're a founding father of the tech movement here in Milwaukee, and that's about 36 years old. I mean, that's not something to take lightly. So we've been around for over 3 decades, really leading the tech scene here in Milwaukee. What can you, maybe just a few anecdotes, fun or otherwise, for our listeners around the world? What can you tell us about some of those early days at PKWARE? Stories you've heard and been around, maybe stuff you've experienced. What was that like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and you've hit it spot on. Milwaukee isn't really thought a lot about as a kind of a tech hub, and it really is. Milwaukee area itself has some great universities. Clearly, Marquette University, where I attended, and there's UWM, University of Wisconsin-Milwaukee. There's the Milwaukee School of Engineering, or MSOE. And so, right here in the heart of the city, you've got 3 great schools that are really producing, extremely talented software engineers every year. And those engineers enter the workforce, and a lot of them stay here. And so, it's not a surprise to me, as I've lived here in the Milwaukee area now, to see kind of a tech boom in tech startups in the area, and even I'm going to call it the older companies that represent the area, like your Direct Supply and Northwestern Mutuals, that have been around, but they've just completely changed the way that they do their business as they needed to, as the world has evolved. And really, they're they're kind of getting all of their resources and employees and their tech ideas from the local people here, from the people who are coming into the marketplace from or into the workforce from the schools. So it's never going to be thought of. There's never going to be a show about the Milwaukee area tech boom like there is for Silicon Valley, but it really does produce a ton of great talent, the Milwaukee area, and we do have a lot of great companies doing some really innovative things. And when you talk about the PKWARE history, when I was thinking about coming to the company, I didn't really know a lot about PKWARE. I have clearly interacted with zip files. I want to say anyone that's used a computer has touched a zip file, but I didn't even know that came from Milwaukee. No one knows that the zip file was born and bred right here in Milwaukee. And so when the effect of that is that PKWARE's been around for such a long time. No one, when you talk to people who don't know about PKWARE and you ask them to name 35-year-old software companies, they quickly jump to IBM and Texas Instruments and some of the big ones, but they don't really think about PKWARE. And so it really does mean that we've had a rich history of innovation and success for ourselves and for our customers. And along the way, since I've been joining, one of the things I do like to do is to talk with my fellow colleagues and employees and hear about our stories that we can tell, because there's so much in the community that we've built within PKWARE that's just fun and exciting and fun to be a part of. We still have a few people on staff who were actually around when Phil Katz was around. For those of you who don't know, the PK in PKWARE stands for Phil Katz. He is, the original inventor of the zip file, and that was back in the very beginning. Phil is, unfortunately, he tragically passed away, so he's no longer with us. But he did start this company back in the mid '80s, and we actually have, as I was saying, someone who was hired by Phil, who's still working here today, and so. He's able to really share a lot of fun, Phil stories and just fun stories about the company growth over time. Some of those stories, I think some of my favorite ones are, just funny things that I hear people say, like, we've been selling software when Amazon was selling books. And that people don't think about that we've actually been doing it. We've been in, helping customers, helping, industry leaders in a lot of the different sectors of business, helping them with either data compression, data protection, or really just, data security in general for 30 plus years. That's crazy. It's crazy that people don't know about us, but, I like to think of it as we're one of the best kept secrets. So, other fun things that I've heard along the way, when Phil started, because Phil was a software engineer, he wasn't a business guy. The beginnings of data compression, he kind of made the zip standard a very popular standard by distributing it on the bulletin boards. This is kind of pre-internet, and it kind of had a cult following, and so really there was other compression technologies at the time, and zip kind of became like the tool of the people, and ultimately, it was selected by the people to kind of be the standard. And so Phil kind of won over the people more than the businesses. And so he didn't really know how to run a business. He didn't, it was in the very early days, it was him and his mom. And one of the fun things that I learned is that, as they were trying to figure out what marketing is, they were putting advertisements for the product in different places with different dollar amounts. So it might be like $19.99 when they put it in the newspaper, and it might be like $19.50 when they put it on, a bulletin board system, so that when the checks came into the mailbox, they could actually determine which was the most effective way of selling the software just by looking at the amount that the check was written for. So they didn't know what they were doing. A lot of the beginnings of the company, it was Phil and his mom running it out of their apartment. And it's just amazing to see, all of the careers and all the intelligent people that have kind of passed through PKWARE, all from a very humble beginnings.
Wow, Jack, I didn't know about his mother. I'd heard a lot about Phil, of course, in his entrepreneurial vision and his genius. But let's give it up for the entrepreneurial moms out there. I mean, that is not something that I knew. I'm glad I actually came to the podcast today, so I could learn that small detail about part of that journey with Phil Katz. No, that's great, and I appreciate you sharing, some of those anecdotes. And the history is rich, and it was a great foundation for us to build what we're building today. Can you maybe talk a little bit about, just in your opinion, how how PKWARE ended up establishing its ultimate role as a trusted vendor? I mean, that's always, we've got, if someone looked at our logos, it's a who's who in the corporate world, not just corporate America, in the corporate world of people who use our software. And so I've been around this space for 25 years. That just doesn't happen by accident. And it's intentional. And so I really would, I would love to hear, and I'm sure our listeners would love to hear how PKWARE became a trusted vendor. And how do you think, again, you're more on the product development side, how did that kind of impact the development direction?
Since I've only been here a better part of a decade, I know a lot about how I think we're doing right now. And I think that I don't think we just started from nowhere. I think it kind of was a continuation of what we've been doing. And so in my opinion, a lot of the trust that we've built with our customers and our prospects, it's really because of a continued execution and continued delivery of service. In the very beginning, when it was just PKZip, data compression is a risk. You can corrupt your data. You can lose your data. By letting a company like PKWARE, have direct access to your data, the software that we were producing, direct access to your data, you're essentially trusting us with arguably one of the most valuable things to your company. And so PKWARE has a rich history of trust, and we've been there. We've been with many of our customers for decades. And so in the very beginning, data compression was the biggest problem. It was, how can we save money on these systems because the storage needs? And so, we listened, and that's what we had a product for. But as time has changed and as technology has changed, disk space and storage is not so much of a problem anymore. Our customers have turned to us with their new problems, and we listen and we respond. An example of that might be, in the beginning, there wasn't always a compliance, around data. It was we've needed to, as a society and as a group of individuals, whether it be your country, your state, or something else, we have imposed rules that protect consumers. Those rules didn't always exist. They've come out of a need, and so as a lot of our customers have been in business as long as we are, these new rules have come down for them. And who do they turn to? Well, you've already got a trusted vendor who you've had in your infrastructure, had in your data center for the better part of a decade or two, and you've already let them basically have access to your data by having their software run. And so while we don't have direct access, our software has access. The things that we build have access. And so they've trusted us. And so they, as the needs of the industry have changed, a lot of our customer feedback has actually changed the direction of what we're doing. So from a compression only product, the PKZip standard, we evolved and had SecureZip. And SecureZip is, basically certificates and PGP keys and passphrases built on top of the zip product or the zip compression. And that was really a pivot to data security, and that was really to help serve our customers as they have data security concerns and needs. And so just in the very beginning, it went from compression to, encryption. And encryption is a great tool. It's a great way to defend your data. But and I would argue that pivot was to help serve the needs of our customers. And we have lots of customers on the SecureZip platform. As I joined the company, it was continuing listening to the problems that our customers are having. Well, the problem with encryption is key management is actually really hard. It's easy to say, oh, let's go encrypt all of our data and let's go re-encrypt the data when someone leaves the company, and let's rotate the keys and we'll get all the keys on everybody's devices. That's actually really hard to pull off. And so that's where the evolution of SecureZip into the PK Protect platform came from. It was listening to our customers again, like, this is a great product, we love what it's doing, but here are some of the challenges that we have with it. And so, listening to the feedback and also understanding, the need for this type of thing, it really birthed the idea of the PK Protect platform. And so, to answer the question in the longest way I can, we've become a trusted vendor because we're here, we're listening, and we understand the problems that our customers are bringing to us. And we don't just try to fit our solution into the problem. Well, a lot of the times we will acknowledge that we might not have a solution, but we're happy to work with them to build a solution. And really kind of finding a middle ground where we can build a product that serves many people's needs has ultimately been, our success is that we're not doing only one-offs for individual customers, but we're coming up with a solution for it.
That's great, Jack. I mean, what you said so meaningful, it really resonates with me. I mean, what you're really talking about is a customer-centric approach that PKWARE has and has had even well before I got here. And that's critical to the success of a software business, from my experience, really understanding what some of the challenges are in the market with the customers, and not building software in a vacuum. I think that's the other point you made over and over was, we don't try to just take a solution and ram it down the throats of customers and partners alike. I think PKWARE has always been good at listening. Any good software company that builds a solid, adaptable and scalable platform are great listeners to their basic customers, to the market. And I think that was all here in place. And again, you being a part of that, a big part of that. And so, and your team, especially, we have so many people that are willing to listen, so many people that are willing to learn and grow. And that's why our PK, as you mentioned, our PK Protect platform has been able to expand and grow over the years to be really a comprehensive player in the space, and have completed that pivot that you rightfully referred to, the pivot from that zip compression play to a full-blown data protection player and data security player. And that was not an easy feat. That takes years, not weeks, months, hours, and days. It takes years. And we're there. And we're there because of people like you. We're there not only because of people like you, we're there because of the great customers, committed customer base that we have, that you reference, and that you work so closely with every day. And so that really resonates with me. I'm sure our listeners, that resonates with them. It's the concept that everything emanates from the customer. And that was your message. And I appreciate that message. And that is our philosophy here, and always has been at PKWARE. And that's contributed greatly to the evolution of this super software company. I guess that's a good segue really into, as we talked about, that you referenced that pivot to the data protection vendor from the zip vendor. We've added on to that. 2 years ago, we acquired DataGuys, as we refer to our DSM, part of our PK Protect platform. This is the discovery, detection, masking part of our platform that's widely adopted and used by some Fortune 50 customers proudly. And I guess you've you've been exposed to that now for a little over 24 months. And I wanted to, just get your take. I'm sure our listeners who have followed Data Guys, users of that really solid platform, I'm sure they'd love to hear how that addition has supported our growth from a product perspective, really over the last 2 years in the product development team.
Yeah, the acquisition of Data Guys and the technology that the Data Guys team has was it was a huge event. There's no other way to call from the technology side. When we talk about what our software does on the PK Protect platform, it kind of is driven right now, and rightfully so, by the concept of data discovery. For a long time, PKWARE's answer was encrypt it, encrypt everything, encrypt it. If you're worried about it, encrypt it. What data discovery unlocks is really this next level of thinking of saying, does this need to be encrypted? I understand that you want me to encrypt everything, but sometimes that's actually not reasonable. And arguably not every file needs to be encrypted. When you're talking about data security, it's always a balance of usability, really. If you encrypt everything, usability of your data and accessibility of the data just drops, and your business can't really survive if the people who need to have access to the data or applications that need to have access to the data can't get it. So data discovery is really what drives the PK Protect platform, and the Data Guys technology. They're built around the idea of discovery. They're built around the concept of don't encrypt everything. They're built around the idea of let's go find what's out there. And so it was remarkable to see, as the Data Guys technology and team and engineers came in and started interacting with the PK Protect platform. It was like two lost souls who have found each other. We viewed a lot of the same problems, a lot of the same philosophies the exact same way. And where it really was such a great fit, the PKWARE has traditionally been about files, individual file protections. And I think that what we have built at PKWARE for individual files is a amazing solution, and it really does solve a lot of the needs of individuals and companies. But data exists in other places other than files, and it's just one of the pieces to the puzzle. When I think about how an organization or even an individual has to protect or monitor or be aware of what's out there, files is a piece of that. Where Data Guys fits in, and where it fits in so greatly with the platform that PKWARE had pre-existing to the acquisition, was Data Guys targets data that's maybe not in your standard files. I think that the idea of data being in what we call structured data systems, like your CRM tools and any application that you're using to run your business. Well, if it's not storing it in a file, then the traditional PKWARE solution is not really going to offer you much. Whereas what Data Guys has is they have a technology stack and a platform that really goes after finding and remediating or managing data that's outside of the files. And so it's really like two puzzle pieces that fit extremely well together without a lot of overlap. And so it's been a really exciting last 2 years as the Data Guys acquisition took place. We were able to take a lot of the actual discovery engine that the Data Guys technology runs on, and really upgrade the PK Protect discovery engine with the Data Guys discovery engine. And it's really been exciting to be a part of it, because we're seeing, better performance, more management, more control over this really important topic of discovery. And ultimately, discovery is kind of the engine that drives automation. And in today's world, as data is really representing, a significant part of your risk, there's no way that you can continue to try to manage that manually. Automation is required. It's no longer like a nice to have, it's a requirement when you're trying to manage your data at an enterprise scale. And discovery unlocks the ability to do automation, because then you can say, if you find the things that I want you to find, I want you to report on it, I want you to mask it, I want you to redact it, whatever you decide. And ultimately, both the DSM, the data store platform, and the file platform, they both offer flexibility and really configuration to meet whatever your data security posture is. We don't assume that everyone agrees on what the right thing to do is. We build in the ability to hopefully meet what you need to do. It might not be what your buddy down the street needs to do, but it's what you need to do. So yeah, the last 2 years have been exciting. It's like I said, two puzzle pieces that fit perfectly together. In that there's really the idea of driving everything off of discovery is built into the whole data guys technology and kind of promise that they've had. So it's really been great.
I love that, Jack. You know what? I love the way that you think about it and articulate it for our audience. The concept of taking really the PK Protect to the next platform by being able to go deeper in that discussion and ask the question around, does this need to be encrypted? Does this need to do X, Y, or Z? That was questions that we couldn't add. Like you said, we didn't have that luxury before the acquisition. Now we do. And that gives us a more thoughtful approach to data protection in general. And so love how you think about that and how you've articulated that from a technology perspective. I'm sure our listeners appreciated all of that's transpired the last few years with that technically and with your team and how we've been able to bring, like you said, those puzzle pieces together and just snap them right in. And I wish it was quite that easy. Obviously, firsthand, it's never that easy, but certainly that's the concept and that's what's happened here. And of course, with your leadership and partnership with many of your colleagues have been able to make that happen for us. And now we have a different story to tell that's more comprehensive for our customers and partners alike. So I really appreciate that. It's been great listening to your analysis of our evolution. More importantly, watching you grow and seeing you contribute as a leader, as someone who is looked up to and admired by so many of us. I'm included in that group. I just want to thank you for joining us today on the Productivity Protected podcast here. The evolution of a software company from the inventor of the zip file in the mid 80s to late 80s to now full-blown data protection vendor and detection, data protection and detection vendor, as you rightfully noted. And that's been quite the journey. I know you've played a major role in the last decade of that, and look forward to your next decade here at PKWARE, and appreciate all you do in the trenches with that super team of yours. And appreciate you carving out the time today, Jack, to be on the Productivity Protected podcast. And I know you're an avid listener. I actually walked by your desk the other day and you kind of pulled your ear to the side and said, "Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't talk to you right now. I'm listening to your podcast. I'll talk to you after. Bye." And so thanks so much for your time today.
It's my pleasure to be here and to share the airwaves with you, Spencer. I definitely appreciate the invite, and it is fun to get out and kind of get out behind the keyboard and talk a bit about PKWARE it is something I've grown to love as I've been here with all the wonderful people that work here and have worked here over the history that I've been here. And yeah, it's a really exciting time to be at PKWARE and really looking forward to hopefully the next decade of growing and continuing to get better. So yeah, thanks again for having me, and Bucks and Six.
Bucks and Six, baby. You heard it right here from Jack Dale, the senior software development entrepreneur expert who has said it right here on this podcast. He predicted Bucks and 6. He didn't say against 2 next year, but it's Bucks and 6. Hashtag PKWARE. You heard it right here. Jack, thanks again for being with us. That's a wrap. That's all the time we have today. Thanks for being with us on the Productivity Protected podcast. I'm your host, Spencer Kupferman, the CEO of PKWARE. Please tune in to our next episode. You know, we always have great guests. We're going to have another special guest. No, I'm not going to tell you who it's going to be here, but they're going to be great, just like every single one of our guests are. If you're interested in being a guest on our show and you'd love to, make sure you write us at podcast@pkware.com. That's podcast@pkware.com. Reach out for all those. And just for comments, feedback, we want to hear from you. Just like we don't develop our software in a vacuum, we don't develop our content for the podcast in a vacuum. We like to hear from you. You guys write us in. Thank you for writing and giving us feedback on what you want to hear, what you want to learn, what you want to know. That's what we're here to provide, the services for all of you out there. So please continue to tune in to the Productivity Protected podcast. Thanks again to everybody. And thank you, Jack Dale, for being with us. Take care.
Thanks for joining us on today's episode of Productivity Protected. Learn more about how PKWARE protects data and workflows by visiting pkware.com. And join us next time for more insider info on protecting data wherever it lives and moves.